Oh, yeah, we got to overturn.
You're listening to the E-Men, inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit.
This special edition of Cops was filmed with the cooperation of the New York City Transit Police. All suspects are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
Bust out the transit intro for, like I said, I promised it would bring back some memories, right? You know?
Yeah.
Yep. That was of course a special edition, and that debuted on New Year's Day, 1994. That episode with the New York City Transit Police special edition of Cops. So I busted that one out because I'm talking to a transit guy tonight. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Mike to New Haven podcast. This is episode 233. If you haven't checked out the previous episode, that was 232, of course, another volume of Tales from the Boom Room, profiles of the NYPD's arson, explosion, and bomb squad. I spoke with Tony Biondelillo, 6th Precinct guy for a long time, made sergeant, and then in 2000 went over to the bomb squad where he spent the last 5 years of his career. Really great guy. And it's funny because I can say this because he's doing fine. He had a heart attack and you would never know it. The guy had a heart attack. I'm thinking he's laid up. I'm thinking he's down for the count. He comes on the show. I can't keep up with him. He's a million miles a minute. So it's good talking with Tony for Tales from the Boom Room. It'll be good talking to my next guest for another volume 27 of the E-Men, inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, underground or above ground. It didn't matter much to him. He was an 18-year veteran of both the New York City Transit Police and the NYPD. He was a rescue specialist in both, first working in the Transit Police's Emergency Medical Rescue Unit, and when the merge happened in 1995, he went out to Harlem's 2 Truck and later on the Bronx's 4 Truck, spent some time at Floyd Bennett Field, too, ESU headquarters, of course, before retiring in the spring of 2002, and that for this volume 27 of the E-Men, inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, retired NYPD Emergency Service Officer, Joe Ocasio. Joe, welcome. How are you?
Welcome. Good evening.
Good to see you, of course, and hope that introduction brought out some good memories for you, like I said at the top. So first things first, before we get into your career and foraying over to law enforcement, tell me about where you grew up, Joe.
Well, I was born in, from my parents' time, I was born in Vernon and Nostrand back in the 50s. And then my memory, if I remember correctly, we lived down on Warren Street. No, I'm sorry, Butler, between Nevins and 3rd Avenue. And we had to move out of there because they built the Wyckoff Garden projects. So we had to move out of there. We only moved around the corner. And we moved to Warren by 3rd and 4th Avenue. And then from there, we wound up at 45 St. Mark's Place. We were there till 1970. In 1970, my parents bought a house in North Bushwick, which is called Bushwick Heights now. So basically, I was 14 when my parents bought the house in Bushwick. So from 14 on, I was raised in Bushwick.
And what was it for you that made you want to go into the job? Was it always the police department you wanted, or you've been happy with anything, fire department, anything like that?
No, it's a crazy story, but I went to school to be an auto mechanic. I went to automotive high school.
Okay.
I worked the automotive field for 8 years. And while I was an auto mechanic, the guy I was working for, my boss, he had a city contract. Back in the 70s, the police cars, in the summer, the guys used to come in with the tires, and you had to put on the summer tires. In the winter, you had to put on snow tires. So he had the contract. We got officers from every precinct. We were on the 104 83rd borderline. So we had guys from the 83, the 81, the 104, the 79, and they would all come in the radio cars with the tires in the back. And my job was to switch out the tires, put on snow tires on the rims and everything, and do all the voucher work and all that stuff. So as long as I was a mechanic, that's all I did was besides working on cars. The guys used to come in with the radio car, and after a while, you start talking to the guys, and they start encouraging you to come on the job and this and that. So that's what happened. So I went from being an auto mechanic to being a police officer, But like I said, you met so many officers every time they came in with the tires. So that developed into something good.
I would say, and it's funny because and I'll get to going into transit in a second. I feel like, and I mentioned this before, if you're going to the fire department, if you're going to the police department, and you've at least been out in the workforce first, I think that's better because there's nothing wrong. And I'm not saying you can't be a great cop or fireman if that's your first job in life. But if you start out with something else and you work your way up, I think especially for a cop walking the beat, you can relate to the common man and the common woman a lot better because a lot of the experiences and the struggles that they're going through or have been through, you've been through.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, being an inner city kid, there's a lot of stuff that you see.
Right.
You see a lot. And then again, one of the other things that the office used to do, we had a big problem on Madison Street between Wyckoff and Myrtle. A lot of cars were being broken into. Mm-hmm. So besides me changing the tires, they used to hang out in the bay, the mechanics bay. Especially in the winter, the doors closed, and they used to look right up the block, and they see somebody suspicious or something like that near a car. They will go in there interrogate them, or if the guy actually broke into the car, they would arrest them. So they would hang on at the gas station and all that stuff at the repair shop. And so you do a lot of talking. They spend a lot of time there with you and stuff like that. Yeah. So you learn. You learn. Yeah.
Shout out to our friends in the live chat tuning in. If, of course, you got a question, submit it, and I'll get to it at the proper time. And I already know what you're going to ask Joe Maliga. Joe Maliga and I have the running joke, of course. And you'll see it later if he puts the question in the chat. Good guy, Joe. Jay Driscoll, I mentioned Joe. Captain Chaos is here. Brian Keller's here as well. Alicia B. Steven Zaslavsky, of course, an assistant commissioner with the New Haven Fire Department here in my neck of the woods. It's good to see you, Commissioner. Glad you're tuning in. As always, I remember joking about this with John Bushing when I had him on back in the summer about going to transit, where once it's said, because I know they used to have the 5, 5, and 5 system, or I think it was either 4 or 5. Like they take 5, put them off into the NYPD. They take another 5, put them off into housing, another 5, put them off into transit. So I said, when they said, Bushing, you're going to transit, his reaction must have been, oh, no. Was that your reaction, or was it, okay, I'm just happy to be a cop in New York City?
Believe it or not, I took several exams. Mm-hmm. I took the NYPD, I took the transit, and I took the state police. So happens that transit called me first. And when I looked what state troopers were making back then and what NYPD was offering me, not NYPD, transit, I went with transit. And believe it or not, troopers back then were only paying $13,000.
Wow.
Transit, I started out. Yes. And I started out with transit, and I remember $21,811 a year. So that's where I went. Yes.
No, it makes sense. Listen, financial security, even if you're a bachelor or a bachelorette, everybody needs to get by. Imagine all the more so when you start a family, you need that financial security. So it was the right decision. And back then, I imagine $21,000 starting pay. It's a lot of money for 1984.
Yeah. I don't know everyone else, all the city workers were making. But 21,811 looked a lot better than 13,000.
Oh yeah, that makes a difference. $8,000 difference we're talking about there. So I mean, it's a right decision on your end. I'm talking with Joe Ocasio. This is volume 27 of the EMED inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. 1984, as I mentioned before, I think an estimated 2 million people take the New York City subway. It's the most interesting beat to start off in. It's an underground city, a different world in and of itself. And that year in transit was a tough one. That was the year, of course, Irma Lozada was killed. And she was the first female police officer in New York State history to die in the line of duty. And it was just a violent time to be a cop in New York City in general, because so many were not only getting killed, they were getting shot and killed particularly. So as far as keeping on your toes, being aware of subway crime during what was the I don't know if Bernard gets it happened yet, but that was the wild times, of course, the New York City subway. Who did you learn from, and what are some of the earliest experiences that most stick out from your time on the beat?
Now, when you say who did I learn from as far as coming on the job?
Yeah, like senior cops, veteran cops.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you went out with a different officer almost like every 2 days, 3 days. You went out with seasoned veterans. Some of them didn't have that much time on the job, but they knew enough to teach you. You know, they were called FTOs, field training officers. And you went out with them, and everybody taught you a different thing. You know, you worked different lines, different subway stations, underground, above ground. So everybody took their turn. You know, when I first came on, I was assigned to TPF, the Tactical Patrol Force, and we worked at 8 at night till 4 in the morning by yourself. You know, you went out with 3 weeks with an experienced officer. After 3 weeks, you're on your own. You know, so that's the way it worked. The good thing was that when I was going to automotive high school, I had to ride the trains. I was aware of the underground city, and not only going to school, but everywhere I went somewhere, it was the subways. I took the subways until I got my first car. But so I was very familiar with the subways, you know, at the time. And a funny thing is, 10 years after I graduated from high school, I was assigned to the Nassau Avenue station on the G, where I went to school.
Wow.
So 10 years
easy.
prior, I was a kid coming through the gate. 10 years later, I'm the officer standing at the gate. You know,
full circle.
So I was very familiar, you know, and back then in the 70s, Jesus Christ, the trains were totally different. They were dark green, basket weave chairs, you know, dim lighting,
Yep.
dim stations. Yeah, yeah. So 10 years later, it was a whole different ball game, you know. But getting back to it, yes, everybody took a turn. You went out with different officers, and they taught you the ropes and everything else. And like I said, after 3 weeks, you're on your own. You know, yeah.
And you know, I'm not saying this as any disrespect to anybody that was walking the beat or in RMPs back then, in housing or in the city, because obviously, listen, in interviewing those guys, you know, and gals, they were at war back then too, but you don't have any cover out there. At least if you're in a shooting, for example, you got the RMP you could hide behind, and of course you can call backup, and it's there in 30 seconds. Your radios, let's call a spade a spade. The radios, for the most part, were not that functional. And that's putting it nicely. And on top of that, as you said, you are alone. So I feel like transit cops back then, pre-merge, especially before the technology boom in the 90s, especially before Bill Bratton came to the mix, they were, for lack of a better way to put it, and again, no disrespect to NYPD or housing, they were the thinking man's cop, because your best weapon wasn't your side piece. It was your brain. It was your mouth. What you said could have dictated an easy arrest, a fight for your life, or even death.
Yes. And you know, it's funny you say that about your best weapon. Even after I became an officer, and even till this day, you know, like when I see like a trooper or someone, or I go into the city, I'm in New York City quite a bit. I tell people the best tool that you have is your mouth.
Right.
Okay, forget about the nightstick, forget about your gun. The way you talk to people, how you treat the individuals, that makes a big difference. That can de-escalate any situation. You know, it's all about how you talk to the individuals. You know, you're no different than them. The only thing is that you're wearing a uniform, but you treat everyone like a human being. You know, you treat them with respect. You know, not for nothing, but there was an incident. Not an incident. Listen to this. My wife and I, when I worked day tours, my wife and I used to go down in Manhattan, you know, for strolls or coffee or the sidewalk cafes and stuff like that. And one day we're walking down the street, and I see a guy walking towards us, and I told my wife, I recognize him. Oh, I arrested this guy. I was expecting the worst. He's pushing a wagon, like a shopping cart. He's pushing a shopping cart, and it's got roses in it. You know, it's got tin cans with the roses in it. So I'm expecting the worst. He recognizes me. He's asking me, "Is this your wife?" And I told him, "Yes." Turns around and picks up a bushel of roses, hands it to my wife. He goes, "This is for you." He goes, "Your husband treated me like a gentleman." And he gave us this basket of roses. I was stunned. I was shocked. He said, "I treat him like a gentleman." And accordingly so, But I was expecting for the worst, but that took me for a loop. For him to give her this bushel of roses and tell her that I respected him. Even though I arrested him, I treat him with respect. That says something. That says something. You
Yeah.
know, it does. But I will never ever forget that. Expecting the worst, and look what the outcome was. She got a bushel of roses.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
it goes a long way. They never ever forget that. I remember a story. His name was Harry Ryman, and he was shot and killed off duty trying to intervene in a carjacking. He noticed somebody was breaking into his neighbor's car. He gave chase. I think this was in Queens. And in reading the story in the New York Daily News about his funeral in their archives, there were two teenage kids that showed up. And they asked him, what was your connection to him? And they said, well, we weren't related to him. But the reason why we came here is one time, we got in trouble for, I forget what it was. He talked to us and treated us with respect. He was stern with us, but he talked to us and treated us with respect. And we thought we'd return the favor and pay our respects to him. They never forgot that. So they don't, it really does go a long way because, listen, unless they've done something truly awful, why go that length? Why talk to them like they're excrement? Why treat them like they're excrement? We're all human beings at the end of the day. So it really does go a long way. You guys were utilizing, Bill Bratton calls it verbal judo. You were utilizing verbal judo before it was even called verbal judo.
Right, right. Again, this here is your best weapon.
Mm-hmm.
How you talk to people, how you treat them, no matter how bad they are, treat them with respect. You treat them with respect, and it goes a long way. It goes a long way. Yeah. But getting back to this thing with the transit, boy, I tell you, you're born and raised in New York City, but living down there, that's something.
Yeah.
That's something. I tell you, working 8 at night till 4 in the morning by yourselves. The radio were a little bigger than a brick. Sometimes it didn't work. The Motorola radios, them things were huge. They've come a long way what they use it now. But back then, these things were bigger than a brick.
Mm-hmm.
As far as if something was to happen, just stay away from the edge of that platform,
Mm-hmm.
Because you never know what the intentions are. But, thank God everything worked out okay throughout my career. And Friday nights was crazy down in the subway. That was Friday nights. You have the party goers that are coming out of the clubs, going to the clubs, at 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 in the morning, and everybody's in a different state of mind. Who's happy, who's sad, who's upset, and you deal with all of them. They're all running the subways and everything else. And you got the lush workers trying to rip people off and this and that. It's a different world down there. Again, born and raised in the city, it gives you an upper hand because you have an understanding of the subway. Like I mentioned earlier, we rode the subways to and from school and then everything else I had to do outside of school. But, it's a different world down there. It's crazy. It is.
Speaking of, by the way, Billy Kennedy's here. He says, evening, all looking good, Joe. So good to see you, Billy. Good man, always here, always supporting the show, and I appreciate that. Former guest of the show as well. That said, the year you came on, 84, I mentioned them earlier, that was the year that Bernard Goetz kind of changed the game in terms of, perception of crime in the subway, and obviously maybe even how the transit police operated with what he did. And what you think of him or what you don't think of him is not for us to sit here and litigate, obviously, but everybody's familiar with that incident. How did that? Because that was the moment that people said, you know what? He's right. Crime is out of control in the city, and so much was happening. How did what he did change the way the transit police operated, if at all?
I think they put out extra patrols. And believe it or not, I remember that incident. I don't know where I was, but that was Chambers on Chambers Street. And believe it or not, I actually got to meet Bernie Goetz. He lived in the Courtney houses on 14th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue. That's where he used to live. Yeah. And there's a train station on the corner there, which I happen to work also.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Wow, that's a
yeah,
small world.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, but the patrol was beefed up, but you can only beef up so much because I think the whole job in transit we only had like 4,000 on the transit
Yep.
police,
At your peak, yeah, it's the highest you had.
right? And
Yeah.
and then 4,000, and I believe there's what 600 tracks of train tracks, 600 miles, 400 stations. You can only cover so much.
Right.
You
And
can only
that's
cover so much.
that was just four of the five boroughs because I don't think you guys covered Staten Island, right?
No,
Yeah,
no.
you guys didn't have Staten Island. That was the only borough that you didn't have.
And
But
then
even then,
again,
in four
Staten Island,
boroughs,
the train station in Staten Island, if I'm correct, it was only maybe 5 stops. That was it.
yeah. Yeah, there wasn't a need, down there in the Richmond County Sheriff's Office.
Yeah,
why, why
yeah.
would you need the transit police? Of course, I kid. I love Staten Island. Shout out to everybody from Staten Island, particularly John Latanzio and Amanda Farinacci. But that said, another hardcore incident in 1987 that resulted tragically in the death of one of the transit officers, Bobby Venable, 1987. I mentioned it before previously on the show. He gets flagged down. I think he was actually driving prisoners back in a van, and they get flagged down for two heavily armed gunmen. A shootout ensues, and Bobby's killed. Now, transit's a small department, only
Yes.
4,000, like you said. I don't know if you knew him at all, but maybe you at minimum knew of him. When that incident happened, you heard he was killed, and he left behind a young daughter too. How'd that affect you?
April he left behind. I'll tell you what. Okay. I used to drive Bobby Venable home.
Wow. So you did know him
Okay.
well.
Yes. I used to drive Bobby Venable home because prior to him leaving, he used to work in District 2.
Mhm.
Okay. Bobby worked in District 2. So when he was working in District 2, I used to drive him over to Linden Boulevard, the housing projects over there. As a matter of fact, if you go over there, the park is Venable. It's named Venable
Yep.
Park.
Named after him. Yep.
Yes, yes. And his daughter was April, and I believe she was 5 at the time when he got killed.
Mhm.
And when he left District 2, I forgot exactly what unit he went to, but he was driving prisoners, and he was working with Sergeant Richie Scher. I remember the incident very well. Yeah, and one thing we told him, Bobby, be careful. When he left District 2, Bobby, be careful. And end result is, but yes, I used to drive Bobby home.
Yeah.
Yes, I knew him very well.
Yeah.
Very well. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, he was doing that's that an incident like that really drives the point home that it doesn't matter what the patch says. I mean, if somebody comes up to you, hey, this is happening down the street, it's not like you look at your patch and say, sorry, I'm housing, I only handle NYCHA, or sorry, I'm transit, I only handle the subways. No, you took an oath. And he was living that oath, and ultimately he died in accordance with that oath. And I think those guys got life, but they were, like I said, they were in an apartment with long guns. Why? Who knows? But tragically, Bobby was
Yeah.
struck and
Yeah.
killed. 35 years old, too. A young guy, very young guy. And a
Yes.
single dad, I
Yes.
believe, too.
Well, yes, he was. He was. But going back even before Bobby, 3 months after I graduated academy, District 33, Irma got killed. I knew Irma.
Hmm.
I knew Irma in District 33. And if I'm correct, it was a Friday night she got killed, I believe.
I think so.
Um,
I'll look it
yeah,
up.
yeah. And when they found her, she was only 3 blocks from where I used to live, down Wilson Avenue.
Wow.
Yeah,
My
because at the
goodness.
time I was living on Schaefer and Knickerbocker.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and that station is three blocks away from me, Wilson Avenue on the L.
Hmm.
When she exited, and I remember exactly who she was working with too that day. Yes,
Yeah,
I
that was a
remember who.
Friday. It was September 21st, 1984. I just looked at it. And I don't say this obviously flirtatiously, but what a beautiful girl. I've seen pictures of her. She was like so beautiful, and she had her life taken so violently.
Yeah, yeah. Her nickname was Fran.
I've heard. Why'd they call her that? You know why?
I have no idea, but that was her nickname, Fran.
Yeah. So I've
Yeah,
heard.
yeah. That was my first funeral I attended as an officer. Yeah, especially someone from your own command.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. And she
yeah,
started her career young because she was an auxiliary cop for a number of years. And then she joined transit when she was like 20, 21, and she was active by all accounts. She was like a good, solid, active cop that held her own. And I always say this about, when guys come up and gals come up on the show on the FD or the PD side that die in the line of duty or die, from complications of illnesses related to the job. I would have liked to have seen what they could have accomplished. Like if you would have given Irma Lozada a full 20, 25, 30-year career, she would have done amazing, I'm sure.
She probably would have came up through the ranks.
I think so.
Probably, yeah.
She was active. She was a very active cop. So I think without question, there's an interesting question that Joe Maliga has. It's not the baby question that he usually asks, but it's a good one. And he says, how did you feel about the guardian angels on the subway, which I think was another result of the Bernie Getz thing?
Oh, let me tell you. Yeah. Well, doing TPF at night, the guardian angels used to ride with us. And I remember the red beret. So at every stop, you had to stick your head out the door. They would stick their heads out the door also. So now you have maybe 10 guardian angels, maybe 8, and all different heights. So now you're trying to look above or below them to see each way on the platform. So after a while, what happened was they decided they're going to stick their heads out the door, but they will go down on one knee. So when you look to your right and to your left, all you saw was red berets at knee level to your right and to your left. And then you can see above them. You know, and I remember Curtis and at his time Lisa, you know, and everything else. And yeah, but we rode with them. So at every stop, we had to move one. If it was an 8-car train, at every stop, you had to move one car. So you constantly had to keep moving. At every stop, you had to go to the next car. But we rode with them a lot. You know, they rode with us and stuff like that. And it was good to see them. You know, it was good. You know, they weren't liked by a lot of people, but they were deterrent, you know. And back in the 80s, you needed that. You know, one officer can't do everything. You know, I can't mean any cars, right? But they were there. Yeah. But I remember, Curtis and Lisa, I remember them very well. Yeah, along with the other guys. Yeah.
One of the true New York characters. I mean, I know people feel differently about him. Some people love him, some people don't. But I listen. Whatever his views are aside, again, just a classic New York character. It's just he's so synonymous with the city. Maybe he's not known nationally, but he's somebody that when you just look at him, for lack of a better way to word, he's like, yep, that's New York. I love that guy. He's great. He's such a classic character.
Oh, Curtis?
Yeah, Curtis Lewa. He's funny, man. I got a kick out of him.
I don't know if he still has his radio talk show. I know he had a radio talk show.
Oh, yeah. He's on WABC. And for years, it's funny. Him and Ron Kuby, the famous attorney, they had a great morning show. Yep.
Ron Kuby used to live down in the Village. He used to get off at on the A train down at West 4th Street. Mm-hmm. I used to see him also. Mm-hmm. One thing about, you know, when you're working down the subway, all celebrities are well-known people, right? The subways, and you get to see them here and there. But I'm sorry, it wasn't Ron Kuby. It was his partner,
Bill Kunstler.
William Kunstler.
Kunstler. Yep.
He used to get off at West 4th Street on the A train. He lived over there in the Village. Yeah. It was William Kunstler. I used to see, but he was partners with Ron Kuby at the time.
Yep, they had a law firm, unofficially Kunstler and Kuby. Yeah, it's funny because in the Big Lebowski. In one of the scenes, I forget the name. I think it's Jeff Bridges. His character is like drunk. He's like, I want an attorney. Get me Bill Kunstler. And he's doing this, or Ron Kuby. So, and you know, he's again just classic New York characters. And like I said, they had a great morning show for a number of years until they got replaced by Imus on ABC. They actually got pretty good ratings. So getting to 1990. Bratton comes down from Boston, I should say. He had some experience leading some municipal I can't speak today, municipal police agencies in the suburbs of Boston. Then he becomes the transit police chief, and he really brought you guys. He was so ahead of his time with transit, really, because he brought you guys into the 21st century. Before the 21st century had even commenced. He got the Glocks. He got fully accredited, of course, on the federal side. It must have been great having him and Jack Maple around, even though they were only there 2 years. What a great 2 years it was.
Well, I tell you, I credit William Bratton's upcoming and well-known. I credit that due to Jack Maple. Jack Maple used to run a unit out of District 2 when I was in District 2. Jack Maple was very talented. He knew the system and everything else. He was Bratton's right-hand man. Mm-hmm. And Jack knew a lot. So Bratton heeded his advice, and it turned out to be something good. You know, it turned out to be something good. Yeah, Maple. Like I said, he ran I can't remember the name of his unit, decoy unit, I think it was. Yeah, but he knew the system. He knew what to do, and when Bratton came on board, we went and the department got accredited, uh, which means that you have to bring everything up to certain specifications, and he did that, and we got it. And then we had the radio cars with the emblem accredited department and all that stuff on there. Remember back in the early '90s we had that. Yeah, yeah. But it turned out to be a good thing. It was sad to see Jack Maple. He passed away.
Yeah.
But yeah, very intelligent guy.
Oh, very. I would have given anything to have Jack Maple on this show, man. I would have loved to have talked to that dude for hours because, again, he had flash and pizzazz. And there's a classic picture of, I wish I could find it. I should have found it before the show began. Shame on me for not. Of the decoy unit, and he's dressed in like this pink suit with the hat and he's got the pipe coat. He looks like a pimp, but it's hilarious because one guy's wearing a Yankee shirt, and another guy, he's rocking out in like a Knicks jersey. It's just a really classic photo. And Comstat really, a lot of people attribute the start of Comstat to a chief by the name of Mario Selvaggi, who, he later became a chief. He was originally an NYPD captain. But either way, obviously, Jack was one of the guys that thought of Comstat originally as well. And he implemented that, I think, before it became computerized with a chart at one of his districts. And he would just like take these bobby pins or like these map pins and put them in certain spots where the crime was particularly rampant. And boom, guys and gals would be sent out there. And all of a sudden, before you know it, next time the report came around for that same district, crime was down. He was
Well,
great.
one thing that we did have in transit at roll call, they had these things called PCCs, condition cards. They were conditioned. So what you did was you looked at, similar to what you just mentioned, and on your back of your notebook, your memo book, you wrote down what stations were heavily targeted for robberies, larcenies, or stuff like that. And you got a description of the PCC cards. And you went out there with this knowledge. And don't get caught without having something in the back of your memo book. The sergeant will let you know, So they were very strict on making sure that you knew the stations that you would cover, what the major crimes were on those stations. At every station you covered, you knew exactly what was going on there from previous police reports that were filled out because you had it already jotted down in the back of your book, your memo book. And you had the clothing that they were wearing, the time it occurred, and stuff like that. So you went out on a Wednesday, you look at the back of your memo book, okay, previous Wednesday, whatever it was, could have been 5-6 months ago, this occurred. So you know that occurred at that station. And it's a possibility it could happen again by a certain person or someone different. But you knew the problem at every station, based on the previous reports. You had access to all that information. Yeah. Yep.
Didn't you guys have like a mobile command center too? You guys had like a bus and you would find these people and round them up. It was hilarious. I remember seeing that at the clip. You guys would legitimately track these people down because the transit detectives were awesome. You guys had a really amazing detective bureau and they would find these guys and it's like, it looks like a school bus, but you guys owned it and you just bring them down and booking.
Actually, they have bigger ones. They had like the MTA type buses.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, they had the MTA type buses, all kind of computers on their radios, and holding cells, or stations where each individual got handcuffed to the bar, and they went from station to station, and they would scoop everybody up and bring them there, and from there they either got what we call a DAT, or they go straight to jail if they couldn't be verified then and there, or if they were wanted, something like that. Then a radio call would take them from that bus straight to central booking. Yeah. And if everything, you were able to verify everything, you had no warrants, right from the bus, you would get a disappearance ticket. We call it a disappearance ticket, which is the best appearance ticket. So we call it a disappearance ticket. If you didn't have any warrants, you got a disappearance ticket, and from the bus, you got let go.
Ah,
If you had warrants or something like that, a radio car would take you from that bus right to central booking. And these buses went throughout the city and all of that stuff. And they were just targeted different areas.
mm.
Yeah, different areas.
Before I continue, there's a guy here you might know, and he says, "Hello, gents. It's Pete Whalen, great man, Joe Ocasio. I know Joe way back from District 2. Glad to see he's doing well. Good to see you, Pete."
Pete Whalen. I hope he's doing fine.
Yep, he just
Yep.
finished up
I-
earlier this year.
I
Out of
think he
ESU.
retired, didn't he?
Yeah, out of Truck 6 early, back in like June. Was it June that you retired, Pete? June or July, I think. Hopefully I have my timetable correct. After 36 years. And if you look at him, look at this handsome devil. He doesn't look like he put 36 years in. He just looks like he got out of the academy. Look at Pete.
I worked with him back in District 2 also.
Yep.
I had the
Yeah.
pleasure of working with him in District 2, and I worked with his brother in the MRU. Sadly,
Yeah.
his brother passed away. But
Right.
yeah, I worked with his brother Tommy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nothing but good things that many people, including myself, have to say about the Whalens. Rather if you knew Thomas, rather if you know Pete, just good people all around. So good to see you, Pete. Thank you always for supporting the show as you do. So 1992, getting into the rescue unit, emergency medical rescue unit. Of course, before I even get to that, I have this clip here from the 1995 documentary City Underground about the transit police. And here is a minute and a half on EMRU.
Special units backup patrol. The rescue unit is not just another emergency medical service. They're ready for anything. From a passenger trapped beneath the train to a track and tunnel search for a dangerous felon.
Nowhere else do people deal with space cases when a person slips between the platform and the car of a train. Nowhere else do they deal with people who wind up underneath the trains, sometimes through suicide attempts, at other times through mere accidents. We do that, and we do that better than any police department in this country.
It depends on the position of the person, where the wheel is on top of the person. If the person's really big, and depending on where they're wedged, you're gonna have to get a higher lift. The higher you go, the more the train could lose its balance, and 77,000 pounds could topple over, and you would derail the subway.
Emotionally disturbed people can pose a danger to themselves and others on crowded platforms and trains.
The general public has really no idea how many emotionally disturbed people are floating around the cities of New York, and then in the wintertime, the cold weather, they filter down to the subways. Homelessness, they're depressed, they lost their job.
You know, the main thing you want to do is safety of others and get the emotionally disturbed person to the hospital in good condition.
Holy 90s. That was a good clip, though, but it was a good look at what you guys do because it was a wide array. And it wasn't even just the below ground emergencies, above ground, too, because as one of the cops in that clip said, everything from up above, everything from, the city itself and the fire boroughs, it trickles down. There's a trickle down effect into the subway. EVPs come down there. Somebody who's running from city cops, maybe he's on the run from them. He comes down to the subway trying to get away, or she comes down to the subway trying to get away. So EMRU, animal jobs too. People bringing odd things like snakes and rabid dogs down below. Same thing. So there really wasn't anything that you guys wouldn't handle. So I guess given the wide array of jobs that EMRU was handling, was it that attracted you to them?
No.
Interesting enough.
I'm always looking for something different. When I applied for EMRU, I didn't tell anybody about it. I just put the application in. And I just, you get tired of patrol after a while. So you want to do something different, So I put in my application, stuff like that. I went through the interview, the whole process, and I got accepted. But I tell you something, the biggest thing in EMRU was the man unders. My first man under, I didn't believe it. It didn't look like a person. I thought it looked like some kind of mannequin with some red dye on it. Didn't look like a person, and you go under there, it's a person, it's a human being, Again, you have to put your emotions to the side, because that is not normal. To go under a train and pick up body parts is not normal. It takes somebody special, and you can't get emotional. You have to stay detached somewhat, but it is a human being. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think it was a real person. I thought it was a joke or something like that. Yeah. But like I said, after patrol, okay, what else is there after patrol? So I went to EMRU, and it was like starting a second career.
I'll say.
It was like starting a second career because now you get to see additional things, not just patrol, but additional things that you're dealing with and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was definitely different. I remember after a while, when I got to NYU, one of the nicknames I used to hear was we were called nurses with guns.
Medical rescue, right? Yeah.
Yeah, nurses with guns. I remember hearing that from a lot of guys, not from the guys in the unit, from patrol,
Right.
But it is what it is. But, you pick up all these body parts and then you come home and you see this thing again. What they call that, playing back the tapes.
Yep.
One thing I noticed, especially during the holidays, Christmas holidays, we got a lot of men on this. People get depressed and they just go and jump in front of the trains.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes during the holidays when you're the busiest, but it is once you get over the first one, piece of cake, the rest of them.
Right.
Just another day at the office.
For lack of a better way to put it. Yeah. And there was, I don't mean to laugh, and I'm not laughing at this, obviously. There was a job in that episode of Cops that they did on you guys. Franco, Charlie Caperna, and Mike Wacer, amongst others. Housing Rescue was in this too, because they just got started, and ESU, NYPD was there as well. It was a man under job, and I don't know if he fell by accident or if somebody shoved him or he committed suicide. But not only was he under the train, and I talked about this with John Bushing when he was on, that's such a horrible way to die, no matter what the intent was. I mean, the guy had clothes, obviously, before he did it. He was completely naked because he gotten so tumbled about by the train and it dragged him so far from when he first went under it. Completely naked.
Yeah.
And they didn't show his whole body. Obviously, they couldn't on network television. They just showed his leg. And his leg, to your point about the man under job that you had, didn't even look like a person. Looked like one of those prosthetic legs that you see on movie sets, that they had put like some special effects on it or whatever, or some makeup on it. And I just thought to myself, to think that was once a human being that had people that cared about them, that had people that obviously loved them. If it was a suicide, either way, it's sad. But if it was a suicide, I'm like, you really, really had to have hit rock bottom in life to think, you know what? Not only do I want to do this to myself, I want a steel ton machine. I think, what was it? One of the guys mentioned the clip, 7 tons, 77, whatever it is. 77 tons of that to run over me and end my troubles. I mean, that's a disturbing place to reach in one's mind.
Yeah. Well, Mike, it's not just people, jumping in front of the train intentionally. I've been to some jobs that you wouldn't believe. People would jump down into the tracks because the batteries fell out of their Walkman. Okay. Yep. Onto the tracks, and they went after the batteries, and they get whacked by the train over a battery. It's crazy. All the ones where a lady had her purse was snatched from her, but they didn't. She held on to the purse. The perp was on the train. She was on the platform as the train's moving. The guy reached out, grabbed the purse, and dragged the lady right under the train as it's moving.
Oh my God!
So all kind of things happen, for whatever reason. Sometimes, after the job is over, you go home and you think about it on your way home, like, a battery's not worth your life.
No.
The purse had to be a good purse with a good strap. The strap didn't break, and it dragged her right under the train.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Not even that. Just like somebody suffers a heart attack, unfortunately, they're standing near the platform and they fall, or any kind of medical emergency, and they fall onto the tracks. There's that too. And it's funny because, well, I shouldn't say it's funny. Why am I saying that? It's interesting, rather.
Interesting.
Because, yeah, that's a better way to put it. There's me being
a gun. Here's another one. You ever go down to the subway? People are waiting for the subway. What do? They walk to the edge of the platform, look into the tunnel, see where the train is at.
Yep. And then
right? Why?
Yeah.
Why are you looking into that tunnel? Why are you leaning over?
Mhm.
When that train pulls into that station, you are not going to miss it.
Mhm.
Okay? So why are you extending your body, leaning over where somebody can just come over, just tap you, and you'll fall right onto the track? But they're constantly looking down into the tunnel. Where's that train? Where's the train? Believe me, you could be standing up against the wall. When the train comes in, you won't miss it.
Right.
You won't miss it.
How could you?
Certain things, it's beyond me on why people do certain things.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know. New York, people are in a hurry to get somewhere.
Right. Sometimes to their death. And this is funny because I remember in the first Madagascar movie, and the scene always stays with me. Melman, the character that was voiced by David Schwimmer, who of course played Ross on Friends, they're waiting for the train in the subway. And obviously giraffes have a long nap. He's like, oh, I can't hear it. Where is it? He looked the wrong way. Then he looked the other way and he sees it. He's like, ah! They just have to yank him back last minute. Because like I said, that's a machine coming at you, man. That's 77 tons. And the interesting thing about EMRU, by the way, speaking of Pete Whalen ads, Joe and I were driving around District and I told Joe to put in for Transit Rescue. He should thank me. There you go.
I'll thank Pete. I'll thank Pete, but it's a two-way street now. Tell him to remember. See if his mind serves him correct. Tell him to remember when he was driving around Chief Cronin.
Okay. There you go. Joe got your back, Pete. And Joe Garrow's here. He says, hi, brother. Good to see you, Joe.
Tom, say hello.
Hello to Joe. Thanks for tuning in. Because I was going to say, originally in doing my research, Transit Rescue started out in 1977. What it originally was supposed to be was if somebody had a heart attack or a seizure, whatever kind of medical emergency on the train, and they needed to be brought off the train immediately, A, to receive the necessary medical attention, and B, to make sure the transit system kept moving. What was interesting is what started out as that simple concept, a medical rescue, evolved basically into an emergency service unit because you guys did just about everything. Not only like ESU, where you half SWAT or half rescue, you had the best of both worlds. You did the tactical and you did the rescues as well.
Yeah. Again, going back to nurses with guns.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. One thing the TA, the Transit Authority, did not want was those trains being stopped, delayed. You got to keep those trains moving. So whatever medical emergency was going on, you got in there, you took care of it, and kept that train moving. Yeah. Regardless of what, keep the trains moving. That's their thing.
Right.
Remember, one train can hold back up that whole line.
Yep.
Yeah.
It you know what? And by the way, Pete says that was years later, Joe, that he drove the chief. LOL, he says. Man. I will say there was a clip, and thankfully they got this guy off the tracks. That's why I can laugh about it, because this is funny. That whatever his troubles were, this guy gets down into the tracks. He wants to get hit by the train. He's on his phone. And they eventually, before the cops even get there, like I said, they just yank him back up, and then he gets the attention that he needs. And they're like, you better get off that track right now. I'm going to be late for work. I have to get to my recital. I'm like, not even that. Not even don't do this to yourself. You have people that carry, I'm going to be late for work, you moron. Like you said, New York, they're always, there's always a rush to get anywhere. So you just never know. I want to ask you, those tunnel searches for perps, it's dark sometimes. The third rail's there. If you ever had those, which I'm sure you did, tell me about those, man, because that must have been the most dangerous part of EMRU.
Well, interesting. You're going into a dark environment. You have that third rail. It's only 600 volts. As long as you don't have one foot on the third rail and one on the ground, you're okay. You can jump up on the third rail, no problem. Right? But you're going into there, search. And remember, a lot of these guys that do these crimes are very familiar with those tunnels, more familiar than what you are. So they already know their escape route. They know where the emergency exits are at and all that stuff. We got to go around looking for the emergency exit, looking for the light or something like that. But interesting. The rats are running around left and right. Yeah. And then you have the light. At the time we had MP5s. So you have the light on the MP5 and stuff like that, and you're looking around, and it's dirt and garbage. Sometimes it'd be a pooling of water, and you're walking through all this stuff, Sometimes you caught the person, sometimes you didn't. You know, but again, it's interesting. You got that smell, all that stuff comes into play. You
And
know,
it's hot because you're wearing that Kevlar vest. You got the MP5. You got the helmet. Especially during the summer months, trying to do that. No,
yeah,
man, I couldn't.
yeah. Well, again, it's different. It's different. It is very muggy down there. Yeah, it is very muggy. Yeah, but you did the best that you could with what you had.
Right. No, of
Yeah,
course. Those were the
yeah.
resources that you guys had. One of the big jobs that I don't know if you were there for this, if you were working, one of the big jobs that Transit Rescue had, and I just did a show on this for Tales from the Boom Room, the Bomb Squad miniseries that I have, was when that guy firebombed the 4 train in like the morning. He was trying to extort the transit authority. Were you working that day? It happened in the morning.
No,
You
I
weren't
don't
working?
think so. No,
Okay, that was Leary
no.
bombing. Yeah, because I mean that was one of the things that happened. Of course, everybody was, as I covered already for that previous episode. For those of you that haven't watched it, go check it out. That was with Billy Ryan from Arson Explosion and Dan McNally from the Bomb Squad. Where it was right after the Trade Center bombing in '93. So obviously people were on a heightened state of alert. And were you working for the Trade Center bombing in '93? Did you go to that? Or no,
No,
not that one.
no, I
Okay.
did not go to that. No.
Okay, so you were off duty for that one. I remember Franco telling me he was on duty for that one, and at least, well, thank goodness because you didn't have to climb all those stairs, trying to go floor by floor to the 110th floor. My goodness. So at least you were spared that travel,
Yeah.
as your transit brethren had to go and do that along with the SU and the fire department in '93. So they've been talking about the merger for quite some time. By that point, they really, I mean, I think Dinkins wanted it to happen. He lost. Koch tried to get it done. He lost. Giuliani, he played bully ball because he withheld the payroll from transit and basically said, if you don't merge with us, you're not going to get paid. And I'll lay off the entire transit police, which produced, of course, a memorandum of understanding, which is a nice way of saying screw you, on April 2nd, 1995, where you guys officially went into the NYPD. So when the merge happened, listen, it opened up opportunities. Now you're part of city. Now you can go to different places within your career that maybe wasn't possible previously with transit, but still it's a tough adjustment. How did you feel about the merger? What does April 2nd, 1995 mean to Joe Ocasio?
When I got that paper that I was to report to STS school on that Monday, I didn't believe it. I said, nah, this is garbage. I said, they're playing a joke on me, or they're playing a joke on us. I didn't believe it. And then I remember Sergeant Bobby Gagan came over. He goes, this is legit. You will report there. I said, are you sure? It's not a game or something like that. He says, no, this is legit. I didn't believe it. Did not believe it at all. And he said, no, I'm telling you, you ought to report to STS that Monday morning, which I did. And I said, okay, here we are. And that's how I took it, But I didn't believe it at the beginning. I thought it was kind of a joke. Somebody was mailing out letters and stuff like that. I thought it was a joke. Yeah.
Interesting time because it's like, okay, and by the way, I don't know if this is true. Scott G, I'm not doubting you, Scott G. I'm not saying you're lying or anything like that. But he says the TPD was about to get a big raise, and I guess that pissed Rudy off. Is that true?
I couldn't tell you about.
All right, Scott, you would know better than I do. Put more about that in the chat. That way I have a point of reference, Scotty. And good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Like I said, I'm not down yet. I didn't know that. So it happens. And you look on the side of your uniform previously, you see the patch, obviously, first things first, Transit Police, New York City, and then you see New York City Transit Police Emergency Medical Rescue Unit. And then you wear those black uniforms now. Now all of a sudden it says NYPD Police Emergency Service Unit. And, it's in a different patch on the side, Police Department, City of New York. And even though those guys were good to you, and they treated you well and they made you feel at home, I'm sure, because every guy that came from housing rescue and transit rescue has told me such, it's still a learning curve. So, tell me about at least the first couple of months in 1995, trying to get used to doing things, even though you were a rescue cop for a number of years by this point, the NYPD way as opposed to the transit police way.
Well, they handle a lot different jobs than what we used to do. So I remember when they put us to a Scott Pack training, they disassemble every piece of the Scott Pack, put it in a big pile. Then you got blindfolded, and they were told, go in there, put it together while you're blindfolded, and get it operating. You have to open the oxygen and everything else. You got time for that. There's a lot of different things. Water rescues. stuff like that, the tugging of the ropes, elevator jobs, how to deal with the stock occupied. So there were a couple of different things that we were not aware of. At least I wasn't aware of. Oh, I wasn't in EMRU that long either prior to the merge. So there were a couple of different training, additional training. Yeah, yeah. The training that we didn't have in EMRU, we got it from ESU.
Right.
Additional training, auto extrications and stuff like that. It was a different training and stuff. Different things. Whatever we didn't learn in EMRU, we learned at ESU.
Right.
Yeah.
This is volume 27 of the E-Men inside the NYPD's emergency service unit. We're talking with Joe Ocasio. Billy Dempsey's tuning in tonight. And would you come on the show, Billy? I want to have you on the show. He says, Brother Joe, looking good. Hope all is well. And he says, regarding transit, that was the rumor. Transit was going to PERB, where they were comparing us to the counties.
Yeah. Again, I didn't even know about the raise. Yeah. I don't know. Like you said, Giuliani bullied. They were taking away. I believe it was the federal aid from the federal money from the transit authority.
He could do that legally?
I don't know. I'm not a politician. I couldn't tell you.
Neither am I. And thank God for that. But that being said, 1995, you were kind of thrown into the deep end of the pool because there was the papal visit that year. There was UN 50 that year. There was a lot to do combined with everything else that ESU already responds to. So that was kind of, like I said, the deep end of the pool, trial by fire. Tell me about those two details right there, back to back too, because I think UN 50 was September and the papal visit was the very next month, right?
Honestly, I don't remember. I know one thing that stood out was the Oklahoma bombing. When we were in STS sitting in that school, we were sitting in the classroom, and when the bombing happened, I might have been around April 15th. I don't know why that day is ringing a bell.
April 19th.
Oklahoma bombing happened while we were sitting in STS, and some of the instructors got up, and because they were in the Task Force 1 unit, and they got up and they had to get themselves ready to go over to Oklahoma. So we're sitting there like, what's going on? And we find out what was going on and stuff like that. But the UN 50, the first UN 50, that's the only way I was able to get into the UN and see what it looks like inside. Other than that, I've never been inside of it.
Exactly. And talk about a city within a city. That's that thing. It's not just the building that you see, obviously, in Midtown. There's so much underground. It is expansive.
Yeah. Well, I got to go in. We actually sat down. We had lunch there a couple of times, and very impressive. Being a police officer, one of the things that you get to see things that ordinary people don't see, and you get to go places that people don't have access to.
Right.
So it's interesting, when you do stuff like that. I remember the first UN 50. I think they had me as a responder. What we did was every time there was an open window, we had to go to that building, go to that floor, that apartment, and ask them to close the windows. Yeah. So that's what I was doing, Yeah.
It's something. Everybody has a role.
That's right. Yep. Everything, we used to get a call. Check this out. Check that out. Check this out. Check that out. And we responded, and that's what we did. And then we reported back. Everything's okay.
Right, there you go. That's important because, it's those little details. And I mean this sincerely. I'm not joking. That make all the difference, obviously. And you guys covered those bases. Shout out to Estelle Toddy. Estelle, you always make me hungry, of course, whenever I see your post about pasta on LinkedIn. So thank you for that. And she says, combining distinct training, EMRU, ESU, and she's true. And then Scott G adds, we didn't want to have to pay the NYPD what we were going to get from the transit authority. So here's the thing, Scott G, since it looks like you had an interesting career, how about you put together a timeline and email it over to me of your career, and you can come on the show. We'll talk, pal, if you want to. Don't be putting those interesting nuggets in the chat. And don't think I'm going to ask you to come on the show. Think again, Scott G. Good to see you, though. Thank you for tuning in. I listen. You can't be a podcaster if you're not curious, and he's making me curious with the details he's throwing in about his career. So I will say, and maybe this is an overrated detail on my end, and tell me if I'm overrating it or underrating it, but one thing Transit Rescue never had, and I'm curious to see what you thought of this when the merge happened, is the big rescue truck. You guys had the REPs. You always had the REPs. You never, ever had the big rescue truck. So to go from having the REPs to now still having them in ESU, but also having the big truck to contend with and extra tools, how much of a game changer was that for you?
Hey, I really don't think it was a big game changer. It's just that you had access to more equipment. You know, certain things that was on a big truck there, you might not be able to have used it in transit because probably would have been no need for it. Like I know they had the inflatable boats and stuff like that.
Right.
You know, you don't need that in transit. But you know, there was a lot of equipment in there that's again, you need it. You need it. You know, if you need it, it's there.
Right.
You know, if you need it, it's there. But other than that, I think it was well worth it. You know, of having the truck with all the equipment, so you have access to whatever you needed. You know, it just had a lot more equipment on it. A lot more equipment. You had the extendable, the telescopic light towers and stuff like that. You know, it was different. It was different. The amount of equipment accessible to you was different. You know, yeah. And you know, you're thankful that you had access to all that equipment in case you needed it.
No, of course. It's a godsend.
Yeah.
I will say, don't say the boat's not needed because with the way the subway system's flooding these days, when we have the heavy rain, you could have used that boat on a few occasions.
Well, times are changing, you know.
Yeah.
You have to adapt.
Yeah,
you know?
no, of course.
Yeah. But they did have a lot more equipment on the truck there. You know, a lot more equipment. You know, some of the trucks have the built-in generators. We didn't have that in the transit REPs. They had built-in generators and stuff like that.
Yep.
Along with portable generators, you know, stuff like that. You know, the amount of ammo that was stored in there was different. Yeah.
It's a help. It's a help because I mean, listen, the bigger the unit, and that's when the unit was probably at its biggest after the merger of the two rescue units into the NYPD. The more equipment that you're going to need, and it helped because, as you said, times were changing in the city, and even though the city at that time was in the middle of a revival, in the middle of a renaissance, and getting safer, to adjust to more of a presence, to adjust to the evolution and different kind of emergencies you guys were facing. Having that boost in equipment, having those different tools, I think that's one of the benefits of the merger because, you know, there are certain situations in which obviously it helped to have you guys there. If there was a subway emergency, you knew how to handle that because you'd handled it a bunch. Same thing with the housing rescue guys and elevators. And as I said before, you know, to the point of redundancy, and I apologize, but it consistently bears worth repeating. It's such a good thing, even if you didn't want to be merged, speaking generally, to have gotten that because you combined all that expertise into one. And you know who benefited most, Joe? The people in New York City.
The citizens.
Yeah.
Yes. You had three departments that they became united. Everyone came to the table with their own expertise. Everybody, like I said, I came from an automotive background, mechanical skills and stuff like that. There's carpenters, there were electricians, there were guys from, you name it. Everybody has some sort of expertise.
Right.
And it made one astronomical big elite unit.
Right.
Yeah. There was
they got it.
that you couldn't handle at that point. Yeah.
I want to get now because in '96, you guys were training on Roosevelt Island for a little while in the tramway. You got that experience underneath your belt. It's a unique place in New York City. And also you had TWA Flight 800. I'll get to 800 in a second. But just doing that training, for those of you that aren't from New York City, I'll have Joe explain it. Where is Roosevelt Island located and what was it like to train in such a unique area?
Well, what we did was we actually rappelled off the tramway that went from Roosevelt Island, which is under the 59th Street Bridge, if I'm correct. So what we did was we stopped the tramway in the middle of the East River, and then they had the harbor launch down below. Mm-hmm. So we opened up the hatch on the floor of the tram, and we did the rappel from the tram all the way down into the harbor launch. It's like a 4 or 5 minute rappel. Yeah.
Not for the faint of heart.
Well, listen, neither is climbing a bridge.
No, that's true. I don't know how you guys did that. And I'm like, you know what? Just to borrow a Spanish line, if I see somebody that's getting ready to do that, not that I wanted them to do that, I'm like, you know what, pa qué?
Yeah. Well, Mike, again, the guys going to the unit because they want to help and they want to do certain things, and stuff like that. Even when you get to a jump on the bridge, if the guy hasn't jumped by the time you get there,
He ain't jumping.
he's not jumping. He
Which
wants
good.
somebody
Yeah,
to
you don't
talk
want
to.
him to. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, he needs somebody to talk to, and that's where you come in. Your expertise, on dealing with emotionally disturbed people, stuff like that, and you just hang in there and you just talk them out of it.
Right.
Because anyone, if you're really going to jump, you're going to climb, you're going to jump.
Exactly.
And
there are those you just can't save, but there are those that you can. Because I'm like, but to have to scale the bridge to get them, you asked me to do that again. Just to borrow a line from my abuelita. Pues, mijo, que le pasan bien. I can't. It's scary, even if you're strapped in. But again,
Mike,
we talked about it with the man unders, right?
It's scary. Fear will keep you alive. You know that? Fear will keep you alive. Okay. Yes, it's scary. It's fearful, but it will keep you alive. It will keep you on your toes. What to do, what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it is what it is, again, it's a position that we apply for. We got to accept it. And we went in there with the knowledge, the tools, and everything else to help the officers of the patrol and the citizens of New York,
Yeah.
But fear will keep you alive. If you're not fearful of certain things, then maybe it's time to do something else.
Right. That's true, because it does keep you honest.
Yes, it does. It does. Yeah. There's a lot of things that put fear into you. Again, right. When going back to training, constantly training. When the real thing comes along, it's just another day in the office because you've been through this scenario so many times in your training. And that's what's good about ESU. They always had what they call trio training, all kind of training. Training is the key to everything. If you don't train when the real thing happens, what do? So you're constantly training.
Exactly.
Constantly. Yeah. But that rappel wasn't so bad. And we also had the helicopter rappel. That's a 600-foot rappel. So
that's not easy.
No. It was different also. It was different. You're standing outside the helicopter.
Oh, yeah, on the edge, too. I don't know how you guys, again, another thing, but that's the point. Rather, if it's a sea rescue, I know I joke, but obviously, listen, I'm always happy when I see the news. And I think it was just the other day that I forget which truck it was, but they made her grab on the Brooklyn Bridge, where it was a woman, I don't know if it was one truck or a truck, that was getting ready to jump, and they brought her back in. And it's sometimes people are not empathetic. You see these absolute idiots, and these are the worst of society. When somebody's in that moment of crisis, jump, but when you guys step in like that and you help that person, are their problems cured at that moment? No, it's still an uphill battle, but they're gonna be around another day. And I know it sounds cliche, somebody wants them to last another day, and in that case, you guys are literally that lifeline. You are that somebody that says, hey, listen, why would we be strolling up this bridge if we didn't care about you?
Want to hear a funny story about a jumper?
Please.
It was an August afternoon, 4 o'clock. I had just came on. I was doing a 4 to 12. We just came on, jumper on Triborough Bridge on the extension going into Manhattan. August afternoon, blazing sun. It is hot. This guy, no matter what we handed him, he threw the phones into the ocean, into the East River, everything else. Took off all his clothes, completely naked. We were up there well over 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, I think. And when we grabbed him, what's the first thing he said? After being up there about 3 hours, when we grabbed him, the first thing he said was, "Officer, please don't drop me." Okay? You got us up there for 3 hours. We grab you, and the first thing on him was, "Officer, please don't drop me." Okay, so that was a guy who wanted somebody to talk to. Certain things you don't forget. Certain things are funny, you don't forget. You wanted to jump, And then that's the first thing that comes out of your mouth.
He didn't want to do it. Most
Yeah.
of them don't. And thank goodness that they don't go through with it, because there's no coming back from that, unfortunately. One job, speaking of EDPs, you guys had this. It was in Anytime, Anywhere. You remember the Paul Miller job? It was on Amsterdam Avenue.
I'm trying to think. Is that the one on the 13th floor of the housing project, I believe?
I think so.
The
Yeah,
guy
I mean,
barricaded himself in that apartment.
yep, that's the one I'm talking about. Let me just look it up to make sure I have the details correct. But I think it was Amsterdam Avenue, and it was in the Sam Katz book, Anytime, Anywhere.
Yeah.
Hence, I bring it up. So this was, let me see. There's a news article on it. Nothing pops up.
Yeah, if I'm
particularly
correct.
research, but
Yeah. This guy, he actually housing project, and he actually bricked the windows on that project. He mortared and bricked the windows, and then he had 2x8s. Now, mind you, the walls are made out of cement. He had 2x8 vertically up and down, strapped with straps. He fortified that apartment. I believe ESU had been there so many times. He knew about the rabbit tool, the hydraulic door opener. He knew about that. He fortified that door. We had 2 tools, hydraulic tools. Couldn't get the door open. What we wound up doing was, because it was the last floor of the housing apartment, we got the motor from the Jaws of Life, the hydraulic motor, a 36-inch ram. We put a steel plate on the opposite wall of his door, cranked up the ram, the 36-inch ram, hoping that it would open the door. The whole door jammed, and the cinder blocks came down. That's how we gained entry into that apartment. Yeah, but he had fortified that door. Nothing was going to open it. Yeah, that was an interesting job. Yeah, all he had was a little, just the window the size of a brick, that he didn't put a brick on there. Everything else was all bricked up. All the windows had bricks on them and everything.
wow.
Yeah, he was holding his mother and his father hostage.
He had a shotgun too.
And he wound up shooting his father.
Yep.
Yeah, he wound up shooting his father. I remember Ray Nalpint was fairly new in the unit, and he was able to, after we got through the apartment door, the bedroom door was also fortified. But we were able to open it up where Ray Nalpin was able to crawl in there. But I remember the mother yelling out, "You're too late, you're too late." We never heard the shot. That's how fortified and soundproof this room was. But yeah, he wound up shooting the father. Whether the father made it or not, I don't remember.
He didn't. And it ended up being a murder-suicide. He shot and killed his father, and then he turned the gun on himself. And I think you guys had to call the bomb squad, because there was something on the door. It was like a strange current. You guys didn't know what it was, and you had to call them in. And I think the guys that showed up, because it didn't mention them by name in the book, but I know they worked in 8 Truck, were Paul Yerkou and Richie Teamsma, because one of the things that Sam Katz pointed out is these guys used to be E-men, and they remember talking to EDPs in 8 Truck. So that was a crazy job that you guys had. And that's one of the many EDP jobs that, hey, Angie Yang, hey, Scott Wagner, that really doesn't make headlines too much, because there's so many EDPs in New York City, as you know, some more than others. But it's amazing what people can get away with. Because, I mean, I get it. It's a lot to keep up with. But if you're NYCHA and you have a guy that's got a history of mental health problems, who has elderly parents, who's bricking up the windows, something might tell me to look into that apartment, because something's not exactly on the copacetic. That's just me.
Yeah. Well, again, New York, you never know what to expect.
Yeah.
You never know, But that was some job, Well, we ran that motor. We actually ran that motor. We didn't run it in the hole. We actually put it up on the roof. We extended hydraulic lines all the way up the stairs, all the way up to the roof, because you don't want to run the exhaust in that hallway. But yeah, I remember Stevie Bells, we was there, and a bunch of other guys. Yeah, but that was a unique job. Yeah. I couldn't believe that door would not open.
Yeah, no matter how much you guys were trying to do, eventually it came in, and unfortunately, it had a sad conclusion. And that's why at least I'm glad that we're putting more of an onus on mental health now, because if that guy would have had his meds, he would have had his treatment. Oh, who knows? Maybe an incident like that, or maybe his behavior leading up to that incident too,
But
would have never happened.
that's not the first crazy. We had one another on Columbus Avenue. I was working with Kaz. A guy was in the apartment with his mother and sister, I believe. EDP. He's got a knife. And we're waiting for additional units to show up before we make entry. And we knew he had a knife because we were told. But when we heard the lady screaming and yelling inside, we couldn't wait anymore. And I was working with Kazalowskis, and we just took the door. I believe there were 3 of us at the time. Kaz and I took the door because at the time when this starts, we thought he was starting to stab the ladies. We didn't know. All we heard was a lot of screaming. We took the door. We ran in. He saw us. He ran into the bedroom, and Kaz and I were on his tail. We subdued the guy, Kaz and I. But again, another EDP in the housing project. Those housing doors are steel doors.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is what it is. You just go in there and you do the job to the best of your ability and knowledge, and hopefully everything comes out okay.
Absolutely. It's all you can hope for. I mean, one of the things that you always see on the lockers of MOS is the sticker that says "Proper tactics save lives." You follow them to the best of your ability, and maybe you can't save the EDP, but at least you're saving your partner's life, or the person that the EDPs may be holding hostage. As long as most people can get out of that situation alive because you followed proper tactics, well, hey, there you go. And Joe Guerra mentions, and he's right, I'm not denying this, the Bronx is the EDP capital of New York City. He ain't lying. He ain't lying.
Yeah, it must be something in the water.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. But if you saw that documentary that they did on ESU, where they went to the 3-truck and 4-truck respectively, and that one that they filmed in 1999, 2000, lots of EDPs in the Bronx. I don't know what it is about the Bronx, but hey, there you go. That's why they call it the Bronx, right? Listen, the best, the best people, the best EDPs.
There's a reason why it's called the Bronx.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to see it not going to see it anywhere else.
But it has a history behind it. We're not going to get into it, but there's a history why it's called the Bronx.
I'll have to look into it. I'm history.
Yeah, look into it.
Interesting.
It's interesting. Yeah.
So 97 to 98, a couple things. I don't know if you were working for it, but you guys have the you have the RMI and 2-truck. Which
we had the RMI, yeah.
You also had the total containment vessel, of course. And you guys, you'll need that because 8-truck has it too. But, if there's a bomb job in Manhattan or in one of the boroughs that are nearby Manhattan, they'll request you guys to bring it, the bomb squad. So when there was the letter bombs at the UN and they had the TCV come down, were you working that tour or you were off for that tour?
No.
Okay. That was a morning tour.
Yeah.
That was a morning tour.
But I did have another job up in up in Harlem. It was a pipe bomb. We get a call, a pipe bomb laying on the sidewalk. A couple of blocks from the hospital up there, Harlem Hospital. I was working with Eddie Torres. I said, why would there be a pipe bomb laying in the middle of the street, sidewalk? You thought it was bogus. We get there. There's a pipe bomb laying on the sidewalk. So we had the total containment in the 2-truck. That gets called out. The bomb squad comes in. The guy looks at it. They come out with the RMI, pick it up, put it in the total containment vehicle. The guy looks at me and goes, do you have time? It's near the end of our tour. I said, yeah, I'm going to overtime. Just go to the Bronx. The guy takes it apart right then and there. It was a live pipe bomb laying on the sidewalk. It was live. Yeah.
You remember the tech that worked at the bomb tech or no?
No. No. Him, I do not remember. Yeah.
A lot of you guys in the bomb squad. This guy,
but there was another job also. Somebody got arrested Washington Heights. And I remember we got a call. I was working with Kaz again. Go see the chief of the department. Broadway, and I can't remember the street. We get up there, and the chief of the department comes running over to us. We're like, what's going on? He goes, get me the bomb squad, get me additional units, get me the whole world, and don't put nothing on the radio. And we had cell phones. So we got
Is this Animo?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So everything was done over the radio. Come to find out, there was a guy in the apartment, didn't speak English, spoke Spanish. So I had to talk to this guy now for about close to an hour. I convinced the guy to come out of the apartment. He didn't want to come out because he was afraid he was going to get shot. I convinced him to come out. I was told, when you go in, left turn. When you see the kitchen, turn around. There's a closet right behind you. There are 6 pipe bombs in there. I convinced the guy to come out, go in, find the closet. I look up on the shelf. There are 6 pipe bombs up on the shelf. Yeah. That was a crazy job also.
Why did he have them there?
I don't know. Someone, like I said, got arrested out in the street and they ratted this guy out.
Okay. That's how it started.
Yeah. That's how it started. Yeah. Somebody ratted him out. And sometimes this can't be true. 6 pipe bombs? They were there, all 6 of them.
Yep.
Yes, they were right up on the shelf. Yeah.
And they can be easily constructed. People don't realize, and it's dangerous, how quickly somebody can assemble, even if they're not an expert bomb maker, how quickly somebody can put together a bomb. And like I covered before for Tales from the Boom Room, it doesn't always have to be that you're a terrorist that wants to do this in the name of some specific political cause. You could be a drug dealer looking to get back at a rival, take a rival out. You could be a jilted lover. Some people do this stuff for insurance. There's a lot of reasons why a bomb can be constructed in the confines of New York City. But one thing's for certain, thankfully, because of the RMI and TCB and the great men and women in the bomb squad, not too many of them go off. And Scotty Wagner says, to your point earlier on the Bronx, only 2 places have the Bronx and the Vatican. And notice how he puts the Bronx first, which I appreciate that.
Look up the history why it's called the Bronx.
I will. It's going to be. I've been out of school for 3 years, but I'm going to do some homework tonight. And my man Billy Neese is tuning in. Retired. Speaking of the bomb squad, retired out of the bomb squad. He says, finally caught you live. Another great guest. Good to see you, Billy. Of course, I think he did 10 years in the bomb squad. And I think Billy, if I'm not mistaken, you were in the K-9 division of the ESU. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, because I'm not trying to get it wrong. And that said, 97, I think 97, 98. Another interesting detail that was mentioned in that book was Jerusalem 3000, because if they ever want to hold a gathering of any kind of religious or political significance, they will always do it in the city of New York, because why not? And it gives you guys a crap ton of work. I don't know if you remember that detail, but with that detail and with any detail, there's so much prep work. There's so much riding on, like we talked about earlier, even if it's just shutting the windows. Everything has to be followed to a T. What did you enjoy? I know it's stressful, but what did you enjoy most about working those really big details, either for a head of state coming in or for an anniversary of some sort?
Until you're involved in this stuff, you have no idea what it takes, what it entails, the everything from the time the dignitary steps off that plane to their location, the route, any possible thing that can go wrong within the route. When they get there, you have to send the scouts up front. Everything has to be analyzed and secured and all kind of things. There is so much to do. You have no idea of minor things. It's minor, but it's something to think about.
Right.
A route. If something happens on this route, you got to have a secondary route. All kind of things. The mailboxes on the corners. You could put anything inside a mailbox along that route. Even at the locations,
Right.
There is so much that has to be done. Open windows, all that stuff. Yeah. But I'm not sure if I worked so many details in the issue. I don't even know what details I worked in, which ones I didn't work.
Well, there were so many during that time because, as I covered before, by the way, Billy Neese mentions he came from Bronx Robbery. Thank you, Billy. I didn't want, like I said, corrected me if I got that wrong. But either way, hey, Bronx Robbery does work. But that said, I mean, it's not just the political details like UNGA. It's obviously like September. I always mention for the bomb squad that September to December is busy for them. But it's just as busy for you, too, because you have the UN General Assembly, not combined with any other heads of state that may be visiting. Then, of course, if there's playoff games with the Yankees or with the Mets, you have that as well. You have to go do sweeps back in the day at Shea Stadium, at Yankee Stadium. Also, there's the tree lighting at Rockefeller Center. There's a Thanksgiving Day parade, the Halloween parade. And you cap that all off, of course, with the ball drop in Times Square. You guys don't get a break in that 3-month span because you have to be everywhere covering everything. And that's combining that with the given jobs that you're already facing in any given tour.
Yeah. Again, thanks to the Yankees, if I worked a day tour and it was time to go home, nope, you were assigned to Yankee Stadium. Hey, so you made overtime plus you saw the game for free.
Exactly, and I hate you guys for that because you know what I would have given to get into the stadium during that time. Oh my God! And then I always bring this story up, and I want to find who this guy is because he must have one heck of a story. The Yankees, this is during that crazy season in 1998 when they couldn't be beat. This is one of the greatest teams of all time. And they're playing Texas, and they used to smack Texas around because Texas had great offense. Half the guys in that lineup were on steroids, Palmeiro, Gonzalez, Pudge, but they didn't have any pitching. And Shane Spencer, the home run dispenser, takes a ball deep. I think it was off Rick Helling to left field, and where the old Monument Park was, the old stadium. The guy that catches it is a cop. He wasn't an ESU cop, but he jumps up, he gets the ball. And I'm like, I would have became a cop for that detail alone. I'm like, lucky.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. Just moving ahead, and this is volume 27 of the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. Tonight's guest is Joe Ocasio. You get to the new millennium, and Y2K comes and goes. There was the preparation for that, and everything turned out fine. And later that year is when, of course, and for those of you that want to go back and check out my interview with Joe Garrett, he gets into the nitty gritty of that story, that shootout in 2000 with the EDP. And that's one of those situations where, as Joe talked about, Joe Garrett talked about, and then Joe Dolan talked about when he was on the show, nobody won. Nobody. I can't say, even though ESU killed the guy in the end, that anybody won because you got hurt, Garrett got hurt, a couple other people got hurt. Obviously, even though the EDP was doing the wrong thing, his parents loved him. They didn't want to see him die. So that's one of those situations where everybody lost, unfortunately. And you were hurt for a while. And then comes 9/11. And you were in 4 truck by this point, but you still knew the guys in 2 truck. You're working in 4. John Coughlin gets killed. Steve Driscoll gets killed. ESU loses 14 guys. Mentally, that's taxing, man, between your injuries and what the unit was going through, what the city was going through. For lack of a better way to ask the question, what helped you come out of, if there was a mental fog at all, what helped you come out of it?
Honestly, I'm an individual. I don't think too much into things. I just do what has to be done. Mm-hmm. I know, believe it or not, when I heard about that first plane, I went up to the roof of my house in Bushwick. I had a straight shot. I could see the Twin Towers. I actually was on my roof taking pictures, believe it or not, when the second plane came. That's when I ran out of film. Now, that wasn't a coincidence, the second plane. What I did at that time, my wife was home. She hadn't started to work yet. She started work at 9 o'clock that morning. She worked right around the corner, literally around the corner, 500 feet away. So she hadn't left for work yet. And I said, okay, something's going on here. So I went and I pulled my daughter out of the school. And then I went to pull the boy out of school, Randy. Out of all days, Randy cut school. You cut class that day.
What a way to get busted.
Yeah, out of all days, then again, who knows how many other times, but he turned out to be a decent kid for the most part. But I was home that morning during 9/11. I always had my go bag. Mm-hmm. My wife and my daughter were home, and I just grabbed my go bag, and I didn't go to Ford truck right away. I was still on medical test duty. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just coming out of the blood clot. I was on blood thinners for 7 months. So instead of going up to Ford truck, I went straight to Floyd Bennett Field, and I reported there. When I walked in, I saw Lieutenant Bernard was holding a clipboard, and it had the 14 names of our guys who never came out of that building. So away we went to work. You just did what you had to do. I didn't give no second thought about it. What has to be done? Let's do it. Let's do this. Let's do that. So, and that was basically, I think I was up for 30 plus hours that first day. Yeah, you just went and did what you had to do. No second thoughts, no guessing, no nothing. What do you want done? What do you want? You just went in there. You did what you had to do.
Right.
Yes, we're missing 14 guys. Um, you still think about it, especially we have our yearly anniversaries. Sometimes I show up at Floyd Bennett Field for the Day of Remembrance.
Mhm.
I'm 200 miles away, so I can't make every year, but I try to make as much as I can. But, you know, I don't think I was in a fog. I like, what's next, basically. Prepare for what's next. We had the two buildings, just planes flowing into them. What's going to happen next? Is there going to be a nuclear bomb coming or what? We didn't know.
And the anthrax attack, too, the next month. Anthrax scare in October.
Yeah. Well, was it a month after 9/11?
Yep, October 2001.
Well, but we had the plane that came down in the rock.
November. Yeah, Flight 587.
Yeah, I was there also for that one. I actually witnessed that plane coming down.
Wow, really?
I actually witnessed it. It's crazy. But, during 9/11, we received 102 light towers, United Rental light towers that had to be put together, and they were set up throughout. And we also had light towers out in the housing projects out in the Rockaways. And I was coming back with the tanker truck, the fuel truck, and I'm backing that truck up when I hear a boom. And I look up in the sky, and because we had so many seagulls flying around Floyd Bennett Field, I thought it was just another seagull coming straight down. But I'm standing, and I'm looking. Then I realized it's a plane. And we had a class in STS. And I remember jumping out of that truck and running to that building 90. And it looked like I was never going to get there. No matter how much I was running, everything was like in slow motion. So yeah, we went there. But getting back to 9/11, you went and you did what you had to do, and I tell people this, like, up here, to you when you watch it on TV, it's like a movie. To us that were there, it's reality. It hits home.
Yeah.
It hits home. It's not the same watching it on TV as being there in person.
Right.
It's not the same.
When I look at the four, all of them make me sad, obviously, because they all were great guys. But I say the one that makes me saddest, and I remember when Billy Kennedy was telling me about training him, is Brian McDonald, because he just got to ESU, literally that summer, I think June, July of 2001. And from the looks of it, listen, this is a guy that was very talented. I think he was an Army veteran too. So he had that, that skill set from the Army. He brought that to emergency. I would have liked to have seen him get a good 10, 15-year run in ESU. He just gets there. 2 months later, he dies, that day. It's just, that's the one I think about. And I remember talking about it with Bob Masucci from One Truck and Kenny Winkler as well. That's the one that bothers them the most too, because of how new he was. He was brand spanking new in the unit. But I'll ask you the same question I asked Rick Martinez. Rick, unfortunately, because of an injury, had to retire early. And, you were injured, still battling the after effects of the shooting the previous year. Looking back, though, do you view it as, I don't know if the right word's blessing in disguise, maybe it is, who knows? Do you view it in that light? Because who knows, maybe if you were never shot in 2000, you might have been on duty at 4 that morning. Maybe you might have been flying a 7 or 8. And instead of 14, it's bad enough we lost 14 that day. We could have ended up losing 15, Joe. Maybe you were number 15. So do you view it as a blessing in disguise?
I up here, I tell the people up here, those that know me getting shot probably saved my life. That's exactly what I tell them. Because I don't know where I would have been that morning. I might have been in there. But again, I was assigned to desk duty. And that's probably why I wasn't on full. And even on desk duty, like I said, I finished out my career down at the World Trade Center.
Right.
It's something that I will never forget.
Right.
One of the reasons I went to 2 truck, I used to meet a couple of guys from ESU on the road. When I was in EMRU, we used to run past. How I wound up in 2 truck was, may he rest in peace, John DeLaro.
man.
We ran into John a few times. I ran him when I was in the transit rescue a few times, and John says, "Hey, you want to learn the job? Come to 2 truck." That's how I wanted to. I could have gone to 8 truck, a lot closer. I lived in the 8-3 at the time, but John says, "Come on over. We'll teach you this. We'll teach you that." That's how I wound up in 2 truck originally. So on 9/11, everybody did their best to go down there and do the whatever you could do. Yeah. But again, the higher power has something for all of us. We don't know what it may be, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before I get to the rapid fire, and it's been a great conversation with you, Volume 27, the Men Inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, of course, with Joe Ocasio. 18 years. Even though I'm sure you would have rather left on happier terms, and maybe you would have liked to have gone longer, at least 20, maybe even 25. When you look back, there's a lot to be proud of. I mean, there are some people that never get the chance to do the job at all. They end up on the waiting list. They never get on. Things happen. Circumstances happen. So do you at least look back at those 18 years and say, wow, I got to do the job. And not only did I get to do the job, look at the units you worked in. Rescue and Transit, ESU and the NYPD. It's a lot to be proud of, Joe.
It is. And frankly speaking, I would have stood there until, what was it, 61?
63.
I would have stood there till 63. Oh, yeah. No doubt about it. I would have stood there to the very end. The thing with my early dismissal from the job wasn't my doing. The department surgeon said to me, "I'm putting you out," and I thought I made that decision. He goes, "You're not. I'm making it. I'm putting you out." I go, "I don't want to go out," and we're going back and forth. I didn't want to leave. Okay, I'm sure, like every E-man, they enjoy their job. They take pride in what they do, and rightfully so. I did not want to leave. I even called the PBA. I called the union, and they said, "No, he's putting you out, blah, 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 blah." And then comes after a while, you come to your senses. Okay. But I would have been there to the very end, to the age where you had to leave. I would have been there, no doubt. If you ask me, would I be able to go back tomorrow? Would I do it? Yes, without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, we're older now. But I have no second thoughts. Yeah, you take pride in what you do, and every E-man takes pride in what they've done, and I'm sure of that. And it's something that it's just not a 9-to-5 job. Okay, you've come across just about every walk and talk of people on this earth, and you've helped people along the ways, and that's what makes an officer, whether you're ESU or patrol. You have attained so much stuff. It's unbelievable, It's unbelievable. But I'm sure everybody, regardless of their position in the NYPD or any law enforcement, people take pride in what they do, regardless of what's going on out there. Guys do the job because that's what they love to do. And I'm sure anyone who did law enforcement, minus today, but I'm sure the guys are very proud of what they've done in the past. Yeah, and rightfully so.
Awesome. Love it. I think now we can get to the rapid fire, which is 5 hit and run questions from me, 5 hit and run answers from you. Of course, you could say pass if you want. And we'll begin first with the funniest job that you ever responded to.
Funniest job? Oh, okay. I don't know what it is, the housing projects. I get a call one time. Housing project, Upper Manhattan. We go there. There's just imagine the back of for example, the back of a computer tower or another electronics. They have a fan.
Yes.
Someone have a fan.
Right.
Well, we go to this apartment. There's a guy there, stark naked, with his finger stuck in one of those fans in the back of electronics. The guy only weighed maybe about 300 pounds, and he's got this finger stuck in his fan in the back of this, I don't remember what it was, electronic device, but he's stark naked. I thought that was kind of funny, though.
I bet he was sober, too. He had to be sober. Why not?
I don't know. But he's put on some clothes.
Exactly.
But the guy was stark naked. He was about 300 pounds. I think that was one of the funniest jobs I've ever been to. I don't know.
Yeah, that's up there. Why does it always have to involve somebody being naked? So I swear 80% of the time I ask that question, it involves somebody that does not have any form of clothing on them whatsoever. And on that note, we can get to the second question of the rapid fire. Funniest colleagues you ever worked with?
Well, in the unit, I found one of the funniest guys to me was Billy Pizak, A-Truck. Yeah. That guy had, I know. He should have been a comedian. Yeah. But I found him to be funny. Yep. One of the funniest guys. Yeah.
There you go. Third, most uplifting job you ever responded to?
Uplifting. I'm not sure. Doing CPR on someone and bringing them back. That's probably one of those better things I say, bringing somebody back to life. Yeah.
Hey, listen, absolutely. Anytime, as you said, anytime you can bring somebody back. We talked about earlier, saving the EDP, saving those who are suicidal, making sure they get to another day. Nothing more uplifting than that. Fourth, favorite bar or restaurant in New York City?
I was never a drinker. Never got into drinking. I'm not saying that I don't drink, but I don't drink alone. It has to be an event or somebody's going to have a drink with me.
Same.
Never got into drinking.
Yep.
Yeah. But
Smart man.
Favorite bar? I remember when I was in transit, we used to go to this bar called the North River down on Hudson Street. Yeah. But that was after work. We used to go there after work, after the 4 to 12. On a day tour, I went straight home. But I never got into drinking, I never got into it.
Yeah.
You see a lot of drunks out there, and I don't know.
That makes sense.
Not one of my things.
I'll say I waited till I'm the one goody two shoes. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just saying this because I know I'm a dork. I waited until I was 21, the legal age to start drinking. And it's not that I'm binging left and right. I don't want to be drunk. I have no interest in that. But I was with my brother, and he gave me a Coors Light. I'm like, okay, here goes nothing. I took a sip. I'm like, people actually like this stuff. It tasted like crappy water, and I dumped it. But I mean, listen, I'll go for a good Cutwater or a good Corona. I like that. But it has to be, like you said, it has to be a social event, or I'm with friends. I can't drink alone. But hey, some people are braver than we are. And fifth and finally, if you can grab somebody fresh out of STS as an E-man, right? And give them advice right before that first day in their brand new E-truck. What advice would you give them, given your experiences both in transit rescue and ESU?
Well, first of all, the job considers 20 years and you can leave. Again, we're going to go back to what we mentioned earlier. Your mouth is your best tool. Don't be a hero. And, do the job to the best of your ability and the way you were trained. This way, if something goes south, you cannot be held accountable for doing something out of line. Do everything according to the way you were taught. Yes.
Hey, simple advice, but it works. As we said earlier, proper tactics save lives. Don't sign off yet. We'll say goodbye off the air. But before I say goodbye to the lovely audience that always tunes in and supports the show, which I very much appreciate, is there any shout outs to anyone or anything that you want to give?
I want to give a shout out to all the E-men that I've worked with and those I didn't meet. They're all a great bunch of guys.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Shout out to all the E-men. Shout out to everybody that tuned in tonight. Shout out to Rima. Honestly, I need to text Coochie because I want my 2023 calendar. So Coochie, if you listen, You'll get a text from me shortly because those I have the 2022 one. I love the photos, man. I really do. So I got to get my hands on the 23 edition because I was supposed to get it at the Rima luncheon back in September, but my travel plans fell apart because there is not a train from New Haven to Long Island, baby. Not yet, at least. So I'll have to get it the long way. But as long as I get it, thanks,
Grand
Aaron.
Central to Long Island Railroad.
Yeah, I would. That'll be a trek in my future. Thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. I appreciate it. Like I said, Joe, stick around. We'll say goodbye off air.
Yes.
Coming up next on the Mike the New Haven podcast. Tomorrow night, we have a couple of interesting shows coming up, but tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, volume 33 of The Best of the Bravest with the interviews with the FDNY's elite. It's going to be Battalion Chief John Sulka. John did, ironically, he's on for volume 33 years with the FDNY. Numerous interesting stops, including Squad, I think 41. It might have been Squad 41 or Squad 1, one of the two, and Rescue 3. I know he worked in 3. So Battalion Chief John Sulka tomorrow for The Best of the Bravest, 7 o'clock sharp. And Friday, retired NYPD Sergeant Mark Mulitz, and he knows a thing about ESU, particularly Two Truck. Used to bump in a lot to Henry Medina and Ray Ruiz during their days as dynamic partners over in 2. So a couple of shows, exciting shows, I should say, on tap. In the meantime, on behalf of Joe Ocasio, I am Mike Colón. This has been the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. We'll see you next time, and as the E-Men like to say, anytime, baby. Take care. Have a great rest of the night.